Cult Mom Lori Vallow. She can't even look the jury in the face. She continues to scribble as if she's taking legal notes. Boy, I'd like to see what she's scribbling. As testimony pours from the witness stand, including laughing about not being able to cast away demons out of her ex-husband, Charles Vallow, the one her brother killed with her help, and stating that if the exorcism didn't work, that she would just put pills in his water, and then started laughing. He turns up dead about 2 weeks later. The number of dead bodies connected to Cult Mom Lori Vallow is very disturbing. I'm really surprised it took the disappearance of her 2 children before local authorities caught on that something's really wrong with this picture. But that said, the trial is raging on right now. Joining me, high-profile lawyer out of Jacksonville who has handled many homicide cases, not only as an agent for the FBI, but also for a cop in Miami-Dade, Dale Carson. You can find him at dalecarsonlaw.com. Author of Arrest Proof Yourself. Dale, what do you tell a client in court to do while pictures of their dismembered children are being shown to the jury?
What you tell them is to not overreact and to not exhibit displacement activity. And you have to explain to them what the hell that means.
Yeah, explain that to me.
But the displacement activity is, and we saw this in the Murdoch trial, someone starts touching their face, the higher up they touch their face, their lips, their ears, the more stress they're under. Or if they reach out and touch someone else to try to distract everyone from what's going on, and you try to caution the individuals to not do anything that looks unusual at all or attract attention to themselves. So you don't want to cry, you don't want to throw your head on the table or wail or things like that. You just want to sit quietly and behave yourself. And that's really hard for controlling guilty people to do. It's really difficult for them to do.
Well, we heard that yesterday in court, the last day of court, Cult Mom Lori Vallow actually tried to flee the courtroom rather than have to see the pictures of JJ and Tylee. JJ, of course, his body was at least intact, as I've been saying, hermetically sealed in plastic and duct tape. Tylee was totally dismembered and rendered like at a rendering plant. Burned, dismembered, gotten rid of. There was nothing but a bucket of charred fat and flesh left of this beautiful young girl. And rather than look at it like the jury had to, she tried to leave the courtroom. The judge wouldn't let her, and she is shackled to the floor where the jury can't see it. And when that was done, she then put her head down on the table with her eyes closed and refused to look at the evidence or the jury. From what I understand is happening now, she's taking copious notes so she doesn't have to look at the jury as evidence comes in. And let me direct your attention, Dale Carson, to the detective on the stand reading Charles Vallow's email to her saying, "I can't believe you're having an affair and tearing up our family like this." Then he threatens to tell Tammy Daybell.
I was surprised. The introduction of that evidence is really strong. And I'm surprised that the defense and the court didn't have an independent hearing about the admissibility of not only that, but the prejudicial effect of those photographs. I mean, that is...
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Number one, I asked you about Charles Vallow's emails, so you're not being responsive to my question. But I'll take you up on what you just said, your challenge to the crime scene photos. And I've had that challenge thrown at me in court, and I deflected it and won that objection because those photos are actual photos of the crime scene. Yes, they're
Well,
prejudicial and inflammatory. Of course they are.
well,
It's a
and
murder case.
I understood. I understood.
You're going
But
to
I
lose that
always,
motion. I hope you don't actually still
well,
try that in
I
court.
understand that, but it's incumbent upon me to argue it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Because well, I mean, look what happened. And I might want to point out something you may not be aware of. In Japan, you're allowed to substitute an individual to sit with the attorney and pretend it's you. And you know why that
And
is,
that's why
right?
we don't live in Japan. And plus,
Well,
Japan has a instead of a judge and a jury, they have, I think it's 3 judges that sit there and hear the evidence, but they've already looked at the file. So it really doesn't matter who's sitting in the chair. They're going to decide. They probably decided last night in bed reading the evidence. They're not paying any attention to what anybody's saying. There's not a jury. And I think it's 99% of people that go to trial in Japan get convicted.
I forget how well informed you are. I'll try something
You're
sneakier
so
later.
busted. Now, can we get to your bad objection, which was just overruled? The jury will see those pictures. The only pictures the jury may not see are autopsy photos. Now, autopsy photos can also come into evidence if they are probative or prove something that just the picture of the body cannot prove, such as a subdural hematoma. In other words, a bruise under the skin. You can't see it unless you see the autopsy photo of the scalp cut off and pulled back off the skull, and you look down in there and you see a darkening of the blood, which is a bruise, a hematoma. Something like that would allow an autopsy picture to come in.
But
It's
we
got
had
to
a
prove
young,
something a regular photo of the body does
that's
not
right.
prove.
Well, we had a young cheerleader stabbed 117 times
Oh,
down here.
yes.
And so, of course, that photograph clearly, this was a plea deal. Ultimately, there was no trial. But had there been a trial, that would have been shown deliberately over the course of the trial. But I think that sometimes those kinds of photographs tend to cause the jury to not listen to the facts because of the horrible nature of a lot of these murders. And I'm not saying that these people are innocent. What I'm saying is that it's better to try things based on actual facts and evidence.
Actual
and
facts like her body, Tylee's body, being dismembered and rendered like an animal in a slaughterhouse. Right. And you're talking about 13-year-old Tristan Bailey, the little cheerleader that was stabbed about 111 times, I think it was, 100 plus times. Right. By a guy, another teen who wanted to see what it felt like to kill somebody. Yeah. He's going to rot in hell.
Well, and of course, that demonstrates the suffering of the victim. Good Lord.
Awful.
There were the wounds as well as multiple stab wounds. And that's just frightening and horrible. And to think that a 14-year-old child could do that to another child is just unbelievable.
I'd like to try right now to get Dale Carson, high-profile lawyer out of Jacksonville, out of the weeds and back into the middle of the road with the Cult Mom Lori Vallow case. So, my whole point is, you got Cult Mom sitting there just writing. You know why she's writing? Because she cannot look up and meet the jury's eyes. Now, since you brought it up about why this email from Charles Vallow to Lori Vallow shouldn't come in, let's just go through it and explain why it is coming in and has come in. The subject line in the email is, your husband and my wife. And this is for Tammy Daybell, who is now dead. Another list of casualties connected to Cult Mom Lori Vallow. The beginning is that, the subject line says, your husband and my wife, and the body says, are having an affair. Her name is Lori Vallow. I've got definitive proof. If you care to see it, contact me and I'll share it with you. It's devastating, I know, but the truth needs to be shown. And it goes on to say that in another email, he says to Cult Mom Lori Vallow, I'm driving to Tammy Daybell's and I'm telling her that you're having an affair with her husband. And lo and behold, before he can ever get to Tammy Daybell, he's shot dead by Cult Mom's brother with her standing there watching. What about that?
Well, here's what I say about that. 80% of 90% maybe of communication is nonverbal. And when you have a handsome young detective reading perfectly the text, that's what I object to. I don't have any objection to them reading it on their own, as if you would read a text. But to have it delivered by somebody who's got a phenomenal voice has an impact on the jury. And I would certainly argue against that, although it's clearly relevant to the circumstance. I mean, we know, here's the other thing that most people don't know. In Idaho, there's no insanity defense. There is none.
She's not insane.
So, that's exactly right.
Are you
She's
suggesting
not,
she's insane, so therefore she'd have the insanity defense?
No, what I'm suggesting is she's using this religious cult defense, which is a different defense, but it also, in my mind, reflects that she's unstable. But it's a way of getting around the defense, getting around the fact that there's no insanity defense in Idaho.
Since it's bothering you so much, I'm going to read another email. Here we go. Here's another email that came in. And every time I start laughing about this, I feel like hitting myself in the head with a hammer, because then I think about, I'm laughing while Tylee and JJ were murdered, and there's nothing left of Tylee but that human charred flesh in a bucket, and Tammy Daybell was asphyxiated in her sleep for no reason. The only thing she did wrong was ever marry that idiot Chad Daybell, the prophet. Let's see who else is dead. Charles Vallow, he's dead because he dared to suggest he was going to reveal his wife's sex affair. Who else is dead? There's Alex Cox, who I don't believe for 1 minute he died of an embolism.
Well, Cox is dead. Doomsday's wife.
Oh, yeah, Tylee's father, Joseph Ryan. By the time they found his body, he was starting to decompose, and they just guess he died of natural causes. Right. Okay, let me get back to reading that email to irritate you. Now listen to this. This message is from Charles Vallow to Lori Vallow. Lori, I know you don't care how I feel, but just imagine this. How can my actions or breaking your heart result in what you've done? You accuse me of infidelity, but it's you that's been having the affair. It just keeps killing me. Maybe that's your goal. How can you live with yourself, destroying our life, Mel and Brandon's, probably Mel and Brandon too. Now add Chad Daybell family, and you've got a home run. The fact that you will continue to go to temple after all you've done shocks me. There really is something wrong with you. I really don't know. I really don't want to do what I have to do, but you have to be exposed for who you really are. He goes on to say, I'm going to Idaho first to meet with Tammy Daybell. Lori Vallow responds 1 minute later, she won't see you. She's my friend. She won't listen to you. Go ahead. You're ridiculous.
Doesn't that show the power that she has over a husband who knows definitively that she's not being faithful within the bounds of her marriage?
Why do you say it like that? You're certainly putting perfume on the pig. Not being faithful.
No.
She's sneaking off to every location possible and having sex with that freak, Chad Daybell. I told you what his pickup line is, right? Hey,
you did.
We've lived many lives in the past, and in one of them, I was your husband. I've already had sex with you, so let's hop in bed. We've already done it once. Why not again? And it's actually worked.
Well, I just will tell you that there's little doubt in my mind that she has tremendous control in a marriage like that. If you continue to try to get a reason for someone's behavior, you're never going to get that. Yet he tries and tries and tries. So clearly she has a tremendous level of control over him, Otherwise, he'd not be reaching out to her to try to repair the marriage, which is consistent with her behavior in the courtroom and consistent with all of this. I've seen Jesus, I've seen Moroni, I've seen the golden tablets, whatever it is, and to convince people that when people die, it's a result of her cleansing them and the person then dies. I mean, it's an amazing story of concealment and death.
Treachery.
I mean,
it's a story of treachery.
Yes, it is a story of treachery.
I'm just thinking about Cult Mom Lori Vallow in court. Then in comes Lori Vallow's worst nightmare. She once called her brother, Alex Cox, also now dead, her avenging angel, because she would send him out to commit murder, and he would, over and over and over. And now in court is Alex Cox's widow, Zulema Pastenes. And she describes how her then husband, before he died, Alex Cox, was afraid that he was going to be the fall guy for all of these murders. What about that? And then he ends up dead himself, Dale Carson.
Right. Eliminate the witnesses, right? And certainly Cox could testify against her effectively. He would know details that no one else did, and he could allege that she caused him to do it. And we just had that here in Jacksonville with a man who was killed by the husband of his new wife. You're familiar with the case. And the child was in the car with him when it happened. So it's not unheard of for someone to convince somebody else to kill.
You know, Dale Carson, I'm thinking about another aspect of this. The fact that Cult Mom Lori Vallow and that wackadoodle husband of hers, husband number 5, the prophet Chad Daybell, are actually claiming that all of their murders were because of Christ and the angel Moroni. Now, let me understand, Moroni is the angel that appeared before the founder of Mormonism and delivered, according to the Mormons, delivered to him golden tablets of the Book of Mormon, is who I believe the angel Moroni is. Is that right, Jack?
That's right, yeah.
So that's what I probably wouldn't do to a jury full of Christians, including Mormons, to try to somehow drag Christ or Moroni into this. Because I got to tell you something, that leaves a very bad taste in my mouth. Very bad. You know, that one of the commandments, and I'm certainly no Bible scholar, okay? I'm a seeker. I'm trying to follow Christ's teachings, and I have a very long way to go. But I'm pretty sure one of the 10 Commandments is do not take the Lord's name in vain. And to me, blaming your own treachery on some directive from Christ is just that. They are using him in the worst way. I can't speak to Moroni. I'm not as familiar with that. But I tell you what, to even suggest, I mean, Cult Mom Lori Vallow, and it's come out through Alex Cox's widow, Zulema Pastenes, that Cult Mom, actually said she had visitations from Christ.
Right. And she testified credibly, extremely credibly on the stand.
Let me tell you what she said. The attorney, Rachel Smith, who's, in my estimation, a very good lawyer, and highly prepared, articulate, Have you ever seen lawyers read from their notes in court? Like, they'll ask the witness a question, and the witness might just say, "A little green man beamed in from Mars and did it. I saw the whole thing." And then the lawyer keeps looking at their list and asks the next question, like they never heard the answer. I've seen it over and over and over. Not this woman. She's listening. So, and she's keeping a straight face. She says, this is Rachel Smith, when you say she, Cult Mom, was giving testimony of visiting angels, specifically the angel Moroni, what did that mean to you? See, she's got Alex Cox's widow on the stand. And this broke my heart to hear this widow. She said, when someone has had visitations from a heavenly being, it would mean that that person, Cult Mom Lori Vallow, is a very high, very spiritual, has standing, someone very righteous, and is above the spirituality of other people. She actually looked up to Cult Mom Lori Vallow.
That's right. She did. She was a believer partly as well. But, the scammers do this. They will provide you with information that is so extraordinary that you would, in a normal sense, you go, oh, that's ridiculous. But because you're under their power, you start to believe it. And the more outlandish it is, the more difficult it is to disprove, because you can't get a hold of the people who run organizations and things at the very top levels. So you have their phone number, and you can call the secretary for whoever it is, and it seems as though you really do have connections with these people, when in fact it's all a fraud. And that's exactly what we have here. It's unlikely that she ever talked to Jesus Christ. But how do you prove?
Attorney Rachel Smith goes on to question Alex Cox's widow, Zulema Pastenes, and she says, what does that mean to you that someone would actually have a conversation, a physical conversation with Christ? And Ms. Pastenes responds, that would be the highest spiritual experience of any human being that any human being could ever have, to actually speak to Christ. This woman, Cult Mom Lori Vallow, is such a scam. Is there any way she's going to be able to pull the wool over this jury's eyes?
No, I don't think so. And I think that when you have witnesses like that who recognize that witness didn't respond with prepared answers. There was a moment where she reflected on the questions the prosecutor asked, and then she slowly delivered a response that was right on target, and that's the best kind of witness to have.
I got a question. You've had a lot of difficult clients as a defense lawyer. What do you do when your client won't even sit up and look at the jury?
Well, I've had the worst thing happen where when you're giving when the individual that you represent is testifying and goes off the rails to the judge. And of course, you can't control them. You can't make them stop and shut up. And although you want to, it all has to do with preparation, and it has to do with client control. As you know, you have to have an understanding with your client that your mission in the defense side is to make certain that they don't go to prison forever. On the prosecution side, your method is to find the truth and be sure that someone who's guilty actually pays the price. But it's client control. If you have people who act out on the stand, or they get angry on the stand when they're testifying, those are indicia of a lack of credibility. And this witness was perfect, the way she expressed herself following a moment's reflection on the questions from the prosecutor. And it was just delightful to hear, because you can sense the truth of those statements.
Do you think Cult Mom Lori Vallow will take the stand?
You know, I didn't think that Murdoch would,
Me either.
but he did, and he did, and of course, I think she has to take the. I don't think she can take the stand because the power that she had over the individuals that were close to her is not a power you can have over an entire courtroom or a panel of. I think there are 18 seated panelists right now. I guess there's some extras in case there's a problem, but I don't think she can take the stand. I think a cross-examination of her is going to reflect that she is, and that may be a method for the defense if they put her on the stand and the jury goes, she's crazy as a bedbug. You know, perhaps they would maybe not acquit her, but certainly give her a lesser included offense, which means less than first-degree murder or things of that nature. But it is stunning to me, Nancy, I will tell you, that they didn't follow up more quickly on where these children were when they disappeared. And she was skilled enough to use a grandmother's bad access on one of the children in order to cover up their disappearance from the time they were slaughtered. Yet no one, and there doesn't seem to be a crime that is powerful enough to bring her back from the island of Hawaii to the States to appear in front of a judge. I mean, a court order means essentially nothing. It's not a criminal charge, certainly, though a criminal charge did quickly follow. I mean, those poor children, I mean, the whole thing is just absolutely outrageous.
Right now, the defendant, Cult Mom Lori Vallow's worst nightmare has come true. A credible witness describing her behavior. The widow of Alex Cox. We wait as justice unfolds. Goodbye, friend.